Bunbury, the city of three waters, the place you can swim with wild dolphins, the place where you can turn white-collar bohemian down Victoria Street, where you can chase the views up Mailstone Hill, where you can have a swim at Coombana Bay, catch a wave at the back beach or a nude tan at Mindelong. Of course, you can also stop, grab some fruit, veg and other produce at the famous farmers market. And now, it's the place where you can watch a game of AFL. Welcome to Bun Vegas. And welcome Mitchell Woodcock.
Hello, Quarters. How are we?
I am very well. We have brought to you by Tab Touch. Got the touch? Download the Tab Touch app today. What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Can you feel the vibes? Can you feel the Bun Vegas vibes, Mitch?
I can feel us getting a bit vibey in here. We've got the Vegas music. I feel like we're in that movie, Wayne's World, you know, where they're talking about that they haven't sold out and that they've not taken sponsorship deals and they've got dominoes and stuff. And
yes.
I'm sitting here with me hat on, Tab Touch hat on.
You really wanted those hats on, didn't you?
I just thought it was funny.
Damn, you've still got a lot of mates down in Bunbury, despite the fact you spent a couple of years terrorising the joint.
Exactly. The Morris Cricket Club.
Are they excited?
Yeah, they are actually. I've got a bunch of mates from Bunbury and they're really pumped up about this. The Morris Cricket Club are pumped up because they make a lot of money off the parking situation this weekend. But no, look, Bunbury's really heaving for this. So I think what people don't realise is Bunbury's football landscape is enormous. It's the best league outside of Perth by a mile. It wins Country Week just about every year, and if it doesn't, there's almost an internal review as to what went wrong. There's 11 teams now. It's bigger than the waffle in terms of teams. There's players there that have come from there, that go down there, ex-AFL. It's incredible. So, no, this is a really big thing. Hands Oval's had that redevelopment. There's going to be just short of 20,000 people there this weekend. You and I are heading down early Sunday morning. We're very excited. The trip's going to be huge. There's going to be cars going down. This is a really big thing for the Southwest, and it's a really big thing for football in Western Australia. People shouldn't skip on this. This is going to be massive. The whole of Bunbury is going to be in the view of the AFL world. It's a standalone game, really, because Essendon and Carlton aren't on until later that night, and there's a fair gap between. So it might be 17th versus 18th, but I reckon this is a must-watch event.
784 AFL games have been played in WA at three venues, Subiaco, the Wacker, and, of course, Optus Stadium. First game outside the Perth area for premiership points. Hands Oval has hosted 6 AFL pre-season games, some waffle matches, some domestic one-dayers, and a Perth Glory pre-season scratchy as well. But now it's the real deal. 170 metres long, 140 metres wide. Probably closest to all the venues to Optus, which is 165 by 130. Geelong is 170 metres long, but only 115 wide. It's very narrow ground. York Park's 170 and Marara is 175 at the longest. So it's one of the longest grounds in the comp. Yep. It's also one of the windiest, Mitch, as we saw by those statistics that we rolled out in the paper this week. The wind blowing to the northeast or city end, 15 of 20 goals in the preseason game between West Coast and North Melbourne. We kicked at that end.
Yep.
It's a 49-31 split in Southwest Football League games so far this year. So
yeah, it is a strong breeze, and it's been made even stronger. So they've redeveloped it. For anybody who doesn't know, the grandstand side is towards the ocean on the coast. That west side, they can get good protection under there. Expect a lot of people that sit under there to get a lot of the action when there's going to be attacking. If one team wants to block it up, they're going to go to the scoreboard pocket, which will really deaden it out, trust me. This is where it gets really... That's where the wind sort of circumnavigates into that area there, kind of flows through, and It's going to get really trapped under that scoreboard pocket if you wanted to. Kicking to what will be the left of screen on the TV or the left of your dial on your radio will be where it will... The scoring end will be that northern city end. It's going to be quite heavy. There is a big breeze. It almost comes down. When you drive into Hands Oval from the southern end, it's almost like it is a dip. And the wind almost goes down that and then comes straight across. So it will go straight across that area there. Some fantastic players have come from Hands Oval. The great Sid Jackson from Carlton is one that just stands out for me straight away. Leon Baker, the premiership maker at Essendon, another who I've got the privilege of meeting before, is a South Bunbury product. So it's one of those great ovals where there's some great games being played, and this is probably the biggest of the lot. And, you know, Mitch Marsh made his debut there in a one-day game. Eagles haven't played there since since the preseason. Before that, it was 1991 in a preseason game against Adelaide. I've seen waffle games there, but yeah, this is going to be something different.
Could the city house a permanent AFL team?
Yes. I have a firm belief it could. Like I said, it's the strongest competition outside of the waffle and the AFL in WA. In terms of the logistics, well, the airport in Bustleton, this is where North Melbourne are flying straight into. You're talking about trying to get people to live in Tasmania, which is 2-hour flight from Melbourne. Well, who doesn't want to live in Margaret River and Dunsborough and Bustleton? You can drive. It's an hour and a half drive to Bunbury.
Direct flights from Melbourne to Busso.
Yeah. So, it's not like this is the end of the world. And the thing I'm thinking about it is you could have it there where you could play your minor, lower market teams like your North Melbourne and your St Kilda in Bunbury, where you're only going to get if you invested a little bit more heavily as a state government, you're 20,000 there. But then you can move up to Optus Stadium for your bigger games, especially against your own WA teams and your Carltons and your Collingwoods, Geelongs, etc.
Yep.
That's where you would go. I also think the investment in that oval would come to so many different avenues. It would just open it up. Like another Big Bash team could be something that could come down that way as well. You could host A-League games down there. There's just an option. A waffle team even. It's massive. So the population's booming. The economy's booming down there. We've seen the mining industry there has been huge. It's now lithium that's big down there. The footy fans are just fanatic. Like you go to a Southwest Football League grand final, some of them are there from 7 o'clock in the morning for the Colts at 9 until 7 o'clock at night when the league's finally finished. It is huge. So, you add a bit more investment to it. And hey, maybe we could even still gather round.
Well, we could have a mini gather round, but there might be a question about that later. So let's just park that one for the moment. Good ad for WA tourism too, mate. You're obviously on the backhand, a bit of cash coming your way, is it?
Yeah. You spent enough time around it. But no, I just do think it is. I spend a lot of time down there, and the hunger for football down there is insatiable, and you'll surprised how quickly this will be. The whole city will turn out for this, in one way or another, whether they can get in or not.
So we'll get to that game in just a moment, but you're fresh from the Eagles this morning, training, and Andrew McQualter spoke. So what's the latest on Jeremy McGovern?
Yeah, so Jeremy McGovern will see the concussion panel in a few weeks' time, is what Andrew said. They're going to keep it very confidential and private, as is the process.
Yep.
So he's obviously not going to play now for the short term. I don't think we're going to definitely not see him before the bye, if you had to ask me right now, which is only 2 games away anyway, with this weekend and then next weekend against Carlton. I think the longer this drags on, I don't know if it's better or worse. I can't tell. Are they asking for more tests and doing a lot more? Or?
I think they just got to cover as much ground as they can, so quite a few scans, give it a bit of time to settle as well. So you'd have an early scan, settle, then another scan to see how you recover. All of those things will be taken into account. I think you take your time. It's the gravity of the decision, Mitch. It's a big decision to be made. So you want to have as much information as possible.
100%. And look, we saw him today running around out on track. He
did that on Tuesday. He's good. He's still around the club. He's playing the vital role still.
And I wouldn't be surprised if he's there in Bunbury on Sunday on the sidelines talking to players and helping them out. And I know Sandy Brock and Harry Edwards have been getting a lot of guidance from him. So it wouldn't shock me if he's part of the coaching structure almost as that effort there. But yeah, one that you're definitely going to keep an eye on in the next few weeks. I think within the next month to 6 weeks, we'll have a determination on where Jeremy McGovern's future lies.
So what is the latest? Are we going to see a Tom McCarthy or a Jacob Newton, the mid-season draftees, play?
It's incredible, isn't it? It's been the big talk about Tom McCarthy.
They got the right numbers yet?
They do, actually. Jacob Newton had his 46 on today. Tom McCarthy didn't have any jumper on out there today because he wasn't out there. So he's had to return home to Victoria for family reasons. We'll play this weekend, but I think it's going to be waffle. So any Eagles fans out there getting excited, I think he's going to get another game in the waffle against Perth this weekend.
So he's in Melbourne. Oh, so he's in Melbourne just for a couple of days.
Yep,
and
just
back
for a
the weekend.
Thing. Yep, and it was known by West Coast before picking him up.
Sure.
It's a private matter, we've been told, and that's fine. We'll respect that. Jacob Newton will debut in the waffle this weekend as well. He'll play.
Looks good size. I mean, when I say that, he's a little fella. He's a small forward.
Yep,
but he's well stocked, isn't he?
Yeah, kind of. I had him run towards me, and I thought, oh, look, there's Noah Long, and that was Jacob Newton.
Yeah, I thought that the other day.
Different. They're a bit similar. So, Jacob Newton will play against Perth this weekend. We got told by Andrew McQualter. Expect McCarthy to play there as well. Don't be shocked if the Eagles throw him in the squad this afternoon as a bit of fun, but I don't think he plays. McCarthy.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think he plays.
Yeah.
He was really good at the weekend. I think the big ground shocked him a little bit. A couple of times he went on that burst of a run, and you could see him look around for pressure. and there wasn't as much because it's not those smaller grounds in Victoria. He had more room
Probably
to move.
looking towards the can bar, mate, out at Bazzo.
Just trying to make sure he didn't, cop anything. Yeah. No, it was, but the way he ran, you could see what they were trying to do with him. You could see the skills that he's got and that carry and that explosiveness that they really like about him. I did feel like West Coast tried to feed him a little bit to get him into the game, which I'm not criticising. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think it inflates the stats a little bit. He also took the kick-ins. I thought it was a really solid performance. The wet ground didn't help. It didn't rain much that day, but it was a bit soft underfoot. And like I said, he was not used to the bigger grounds. Curious to see how he goes at MinRes this week. It's the same size as Optus. And Perth are a very good side at the moment, obviously coming off a bad loss, but they're still a good outfit. So I'm curious to see where that ends up.
And the latest on Oscar Allen's contract, you asked Andrew McWalter about this today.
Yeah, we actually have a bit of audio just to go with this. So
Let's roll it in.
No, there's no time frame. We're working closely with Oscar and his management crew and our list management, but there's no time frame. He's doing a terrific job at the moment. He's leading our team very well. Probably played his best game for the year last week, and he's in a good space. So we'll just keep working with him.
So a couple of things on that. Yep, Oscar did play his best game for the year. Returned forward a couple of weeks ago. He's kicked 8 goals in 3 weeks, including 4 at the weekend. There's a bit of a school of thought that, no Jake Waterman, so Oscar Allen 1 out was a bit better. I don't buy into it. I just think he had better opportunities. I thought he worked harder up and down the ground, and I think he looks fitter than he has been all year. The question I asked, and the reason I asked this is it is officially the midway point of the season, and he's one of 2 captains in the AFL that are yet to be contracted to be on next year, the other one being Marcus Bontempelli at the Bulldogs. If everyone you believe out of that area there says that he's definitely staying at the Dogs and would be shocked if he's not. There's still a watch this space until you put pen to paper, in my opinion. And Oscar's obviously, you've well reported this, Glenn, that, Hawthorn, Brisbane, they're right into him. His head is being turned slightly at the moment. So the longer this goes on, I do wonder how much the Eagles have to put pressure on him to make a decision, because it's going to affect their future regardless at some stage. They are going to have to make a decision on what their forward line looks like beyond this year, and whether Oscar is in that or not is a big piece to play.
Oh, my money is still on Oscar going to Brisbane.
And that's fine, but then West Coast have to work that out going forward, because then they've got to look at, do they prioritise games into Archer Reid, Jack Williams, Joe Shanahan?
You still play Oscar.
And I understand that, but I'm curious as to how this goes, because they've got to then, it's contract situations. If Oscar goes, they can't bring a free agent in because it'll dilute the free agent compensation. If he stays, they could possibly bring some free agents in. That affects then how they're talking to free agents now in the market. And we know that those things, with the Oscar situation, those things start well and truly a year or 2 out.
Well, they'd be talking to them anyway, but you will.
But you can't take them.
Well, no, but you might be able to later on. I mean, they'll know by the latter stages of the year which way it's going to go.
But you can't then, so for example, a Brandon Starcevic, who's a free agent at Brisbane, I expect him to stay at the Lions. But the West Coast Eagles can't be right into him at the moment, because if they bring him in as a free agent, they lose the compensation or it dilutes it for Oscar Allen. Of course,
but you can still talk to them about the possibilities.
You can, but I think it holds up a lot of things, Quarters. And I think this is a big issue for West Coast, that it's going to come to a head at some point.
Now, you mentioned we're at the midway point of the season, so it would be a good opportunity for us just to revisit now. So, a couple of predictions pre-season and where we're at now. So I forecast GWS Sydney Grand Final, and it looks way off at the moment. Yeah, you've just screwed your face up. But so who wins the premiership right now? I think we're going to say the same team here.
Yeah, Collingwood.
Collingwood for me.
Yep.
Just the way they're coached, the way they're balanced. I'm really surprised I'm saying this at the midway point of the season, but I think so. Who's your grand final then?
I think it's Collingwood, GWS. GWS have had a really rough start to the year. I looked at their fixtures the other day, and I feel like they've got a really good run home. I think if you're going to get injuries, you want injuries when they've had them. I reckon if they get them back, and if they get enough players on the park, I still feel like they've got the quality to run this thing coast to coast. Brisbane are the ones who are obviously lurking as well. But for me, I don't know, it's just maybe I've got blind faith in the Giants. I'm not sure. But I just feel like they're primed for a tilt, and they're the kind of team that only need to slip into a top 4 and they can do some real damage.
So I'm going Collingwood Adelaide. I think the Adelaide forward structure, and they're just starting, their defence now is starting to produce the numbers that you want from a contender, and we know their midfield goes pretty deep. I think they've got the all-round capabilities to play in the grand final and trouble Collingwood. So I'm going at this stage with Collingwood v Adelaide. Who's your most improved player in the competition this year?
I'm actually going to go real left field one here. I think it's Josh Rochelle.
Okay.
I think the way Josh Rochelli's upped his game in the last 4 or 5 weeks has been incredible. That soccer at the weekend obviously stood out, the one that set up the Ben Keys goal. I watched him that day that he kicked 5 against West Coast at Adelaide Oval. You remember last year there was talk about, he got dropped, there was talk about him possibly being traded, the Crows and him were unhappy with each other, and now he's such a vital part of what is, like you said, the most dangerous forward line in the competition.
I'm going for Ned Long at Collingwood.
Yep.
I'm going to throw in Patrick Voss there too. Just recent weeks, I reckon, as Freo's most improved player. But I think Ned Long, just what he's done for that Collingwood midfield, the inside ball, the beautiful handball gives to Dacos by 2, or Dakai as they call them. A lot of talk about, is Hawthorn missing them? Yes, he would play at Hawthorn at the moment, but I don't think with Connor Nash and Will Day, he was really going to get it. I don't think he jumps those 2 players at Hawthorn. So I think it's been one of those situations where win-win. I mean, he really has been a win for. It's been a win for Ned Long. It's been a win for Collingwood.
100%.
Who's your All-Australian lock?
Ed Richards from the Western Bulldogs
Okay,
at the moment.
I'm going to go with Nasiah Wanganeen-Malera, and interestingly, now that has been heavily pursued by other teams, but St Kilda's offered 1.2 mil, and as they should, because he will be their best player going forward. Brownlow?
Yeah, Jordan Dawson for me at the moment.
Okay, yeah,
I
good
like
call.
the way Jordan Dawson's going. I think that there's a lot of situations where these good teams get votes stolen off each other, but we've seen with what Paddy Cripps has done that when you're the standout in a big team, sometimes you just get 3 and everyone else gets 2 and 1. So that's for me is Jordan Dawson.
I'm just going Bailey Smith. I think he just stands out. It gets on well with umpires. Doesn't get on well with the AFL or perhaps other players, but actually has a good relationship with umpires. Kicks goals. He's quick. One of the Dash brothers with Max Holmes. So I think it's Bailey Smith.
Can you imagine him getting up there on Brownlow night with McLaughlin and they're doing the speech and he just pumps out the double bird?
Oh, yeah. No, don't think he'd be doing that on Brownlow night. Finally, before we get on to some other stuff, a headline you'd like to see in the second half of the year.
Oh, I really like this one, and it's gonna make a lot of people happy. But it's gonna be Elijah Hewitt signs longest deal in West Coast history. I think he's the player.
Are they going to sign long-term deals now?
I think you can build your club around this kid.
Okay.
I think I know he's signed on for a couple more years, but I want to see him put on for another 4 or 5, and I want to see West Coast build around this guy.
Okay, mine is Greg Swan swings MRO change and moves the pre-finals bye to grand final week.
Yeah, I do like that.
For 2026.
Can you imagine that grand final week where, there's that bye and just a build
whole new podcast, a whole nother podcast on that subject. Now, let's just, before we get into some games, let's talk about another big game here this weekend, the Under-18 Championships, where all the draftees come from. We've got Vic Country versus WA. What are we looking for?
Yeah, Mineral Resources Park, 10 o'clock. I'll be down there bright and
on
early.
Saturday
on
morning.
Saturday. Yeah, it's going to be a great game. Really looking forward to this West Australian side. I actually think they're a real smoky to take this out. Fred Rodriguez will captain it, the South Fremantle player, midfielder, real versatile young man, has already played league football for the Bulldogs, which is a credit to him because that Bulldogs side is star-studded, as we know, top of the ladder. Cody Curtin, the brother of Dan Curtin, played backline last year as an underager, is a forward beast, 100 kilos, 200 centimetres already. I don't know how clubs are not putting him in their top 10. That'd astound me at this stage. Sam Swaddling from West Perth, an absolute ball magnet. I'm going to see him tonight and have a little article on this
feature
weekend.
For Sunday?
For Sunday, yep.
For
so
Saturday.
really looking forward to this one. Tom Phillips, who I've written about previously, actually is doing Scotch College in Melbourne and is flying. He'll fly tomorrow to WA to play for WA. So he's WA's first ever FIFO footballer at under 18 level. Incredible story, that one for me.
You're going to see the beautifully named Wes Wally?
Oh, we are going to see Where's Wally. I love it. West Coast NGA Academy. He's great. Toby Wan, a Freo NGA Academy. There's some great players here.
And so West Coast, if they get the number 1 draft pick.
Oh, here we go.
So the potential number 1 draftee could be playing for the opposition, for the Vic Country.
He will jet into town. This is the most hyped number 1 draft pick, in my opinion, since Harley Reid, which is only 2 years ago. So it's hard to say.
He might be catching up with Harley Reid.
He may be, because it's Willem Dersma. Now, the Dersma name, obviously, everyone knows. There's Xavier at Essendon, former Port Adelaide, and then the brother at North Melbourne. But the Yaz Dersma is the sister of them as well, and she's obviously dating Harley Reid. So it'll be interesting to see. There's obviously that connection there, but Willem Dersma will be in town to take on WA. a lot of recruits will be there to watch this game. This is going to be a big one, and I'm looking forward to it, actually. I do like the under-18 games. You get to see some real young talent.
Now, we don't have David Short's tab touch odds this week. He's on a mid-season bye, but he will be back. So don't worry when you don't hear
him and Kane Corns are having a little break together.
Yes, they are indeed. Let's pick some winners, Mitch. Thursday tonight at 5:30 p.m. Western Bulldogs $1.33. Hawthorn $3.35. Under the pump, my boys, for a couple of weeks now, particularly this week in Melbourne.
Hold on a second, Josh. You watch this. This is what you call happiness insurance.
Oh yeah,
this is where he
I'm
tips
going
the
with
Bulldogs.
the happiness insurance.
And if Hawthorn win, he'll be messaging me at 8:30 tonight doing backflips.
Yeah, look, I'd much rather not get the tip right the Hawks win than the other way around. A big in for the Western Bulldogs. They'll get Treloar back into that side. Hawthorn, the outs really worry me. So James Sicily, well publicised, out until after the bye with hip soreness. Watson is out. Nick Watson's out with illness, and Scrimshaw has been managed. In come defender Seamus Mitchell, Max Ramsden, a tall forward who's played 5 games over the last 2 years, and Sam Butler, brother of, who is a high forward dash mid who's been really impressive for Box Hill the last 2-3 weeks. Broke his leg in April of last year really badly. And I think he was at Box Hill and had to wait for half an hour for an ambulance to arrive. It was horrific scenes at the time. Took a long time to recover. Is back, is playing great footy. They really rate him at Hawthorn. So importantly for them, it's all about the tackling numbers which he brings. So Hawthorn actually won contested ball last weekend, which was surprising, but it has not been a strength the last few weeks, and I think they've got to get their tackling right because they've really dropped considerably. I think the Western Bulldogs win this game. They're in better form. They've won their last 9 matches at Marvel Stadium by an average winning margin of 48 points. So we know they play well under the lid. Hawthorn, more of an MCG specialist, or they've lost the last 2 there. And the pressure factor, as I mentioned, way down for the Hawks. Massively missing Will Day. Dogs are pretty well covered in defence, forward line, and we know they go quite deep in the midfield. So I'm picking them by about 10 points.
Yeah, look, for your household's sake and for Ruffy's sake, your little dog, I hope the Hawks get the win, but I'm tipping the Bulldogs.
Friday, 5:40 p.m, Adelaide $1.60, Brisbane $2.35. Brisbane had to fight hard last week to get the win. They get Oscar McInerney. Well, at least he's available after 3 weeks out with general soreness. So
sounds like it was a bit of a back issue.
And Kitty Coleman has had some more further swelling on that knee after his comeback game from the ACL. It's not dire, but he's going to be out until after the bye, so that's bad news for him. Rory Laird comes back for Adelaide, managed out against Sydney. I think this is going to be a fascinating battle of one of the best defences against one of the best forward lines in the competition, if not the best forward line in the competition. Fogarty, Thilthorpe, Walker, Rochelle, those types of players going through there. Payne, Andrews, Lester, Wilmot. They're a good defence, Brisbane. So I'm going to pick, but it's at Adelaide. Obviously rate them because I picked them to play off in the grand final. I'm picking them to win this one.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go the Lions. I just feel I trust them a little bit more. And I know they've just been going lately, but there's something for me that the Lions are eventually going to turn.
Okay. Well,
I just feel like
they're not far off the top of the ladder.
Yeah, I know, but they've not been playing well.
Yeah, so
I feel like at some stage they're going to fire up and
they're in a great position.
Off here they go.
They can afford to lose one if that makes sense, and I think this will be the week.
Not a firm believer in that.
Okay, Saturday, 11:20, MCG, Richmond, $2.70, Sydney Swans, $1.47. Heartbreaking loss last week by Richmond to GWS. Noah Bolton returns. Noah Bolter, because he was obviously the curfew prohibited him from playing last week, so he played the VFL. Richmond has won its last 2 matches against Sydney at the MCG by an average margin of about 9 points, so they've been close. Sydney, horrific last week. Had the early morning training session after a horrible loss to Adelaide. Callum Mills comes back from suspension. Errol Goulden, importantly, is about 2-3 weeks away from that long-term injury, so he'll really straighten them up. Sydney conceded 63 points to Adelaide's 4.5 intercepts last round. It's third most conceded in a game. The numbers were horrible wherever you look. I'm picking Richmond to win this in a surprise.
I saw some commentary during the week about, did Chad Warner make the wrong move by re-signing for only 2 years at Sydney?
No. Takes him to free agency, so it's fine.
Exactly. And the other thing is, you mentioned Goulden, Papley. Their injuries are horrific at the moment, Sydney. I'm tipping the Swans. This will be the last time I tip them if they don't win this game, because they've been really disappointing. I tipped them last weekend as well against Adelaide, thinking that home ground they should. But, yeah, look, I'm not as down on the Swans. I feel like they've had a really good few years. They might just need a reset year, come back next year stronger. Dean Cox.
Well, Logan McDonald hasn't played yet, and he's out for another 8-10 weeks or something. So.
Yeah, so I'm not as down on people as Sydney, and I think calls like that to Warner, widely re-sign at Sydney are just a bit premature and ridiculous. So I'm going to back the Swans in this one.
Saturday, 2:15 PM, GMHBA Stadium, Geelong, $1.37, Suns, $3.10. This will be a really good game. Pat Dangerfield in from that hamstring. Well, at least he'll face a fitness test. They expect him to play. The really interesting thing here, Jared Witts v. Reece Stanley Bliss-Ups. This is the area they can get a bit of a edge, and perhaps we know the capabilities of the Gold Coast midfield. Won the inside 50 count by 17 against the Cats in round 10 last year. The first time it has won that stat against them since 2017. Just mentioned Jared Witts. They've recorded a hit-out winning percentage of 15.9% at centre bounces. That ranks them second in the competition. So I tell you, they want to, as when you play Geelong, particularly at Cardinia Park, you want to keep the ball out of Tom Stewart's hands, and you want to do that for a reason. Only 5 of his 59 kicks at GMHBA Stadium this season haven't been effective, which gives him a kicking efficiency of 91.5% at that venue. So that's quite
ridiculous.
Incredible. I'm going with Geelong, clearly on the home ground advantage. It's a long trip for the Gold Coast. Couldn't get any further away, really. And so, you can come to Perth, but I mean, certainly from a southern point of view, I think Geelong win this one, but it'll be a tough game.
Yeah, it's going to be a cracking game. I'm with you. I think the Cats over...
Coming off a trip to the Cats.
Yeah, but just at home ground, I can't tip against them down there at the moment. And just watching them last week, like West Coast challenged them, don't get me wrong, but their ability to burn them off at the end was pretty impressive.
So I've just flipped this page over for Saturday's game at 5:35 PM, GWS $1.29, Port Adelaide $3.60. But what jumped off the page at me was Manuka Oval is now Corroboree Group Oval.
Yeah, I saw that. And then I had to put it in the paper yesterday, and I think I just put Manuka Oval.
Manuka Oval in.
Nobody would know where it is.
Oh, jeez. Obviously, the great sadness that we saw last week with Callum Ward out and his inspirational three-quarter time speech to his teammates.
Footy moment of the year for me.
So the real key, that's a big out for them. There's going to be a really big in. Now, maybe this week, it may be the week after the bye. Brent Daniels. So he's been out for a long period with that abdomen injury. Would be his first game in 2 months. In fact, he faces a fitness test. So that's a really important one. I'm picking the Giants in Canberra. Is this the end for Ken Hinkley if they lose?
I'd pick the Giants anywhere right now against this Port Adelaide side. They've got some talent.
They'll get a bit of zing back at halfback because Farrell, who comes in off a knee, Sin comes in off a hip, and Burn Jones is back from the concussion protocol.
Yeah, but they're just playing horrible. Their structures are terrible. Yeah. They've got plenty of talent, but they're not putting it together. They've got no forward line outside of Georgiades, and Rioli's out of form. Well, they're not since he came back. They're just nowhere near it at the moment.
They're not kicking scores, averaging 61.9 points in their last 5 matches, which ranks them last offensively.
And they can't then turn it around and be offensive at the other end. Ken Hinkley's in serious trouble. He's getting a bit feisty now about his position, but the realism of it is they've put him in this position. He's there now. This is the end of his coaching tenure at Port Adelaide, and you have to wonder what good it's doing for them to be there.
I'm normally against changing coaches mid-season. I don't see any point, but I think in this instance it's a little bit different because you've got Josh Carr sitting there. We know who the new coach is going to be. So
if you're not going to play finals, just move aside, let the new guy come in, and start looking to head to next year because they've got too much talent to waste.
Okay, we spoke about this earlier. Sunday, exciting times for the Southwest City at 1:20 PM, Hands Oval, Bunbury. North Melbourne with its relocated home game, $1.62 v West Coast at $2.30. North Melbourne has conceded 55 goals to key forwards, the second most by any team besides the Eagles, 67. So there's going to be opportunities here. Some good matchups looming wherever they fall. Comben, Allen, Pink, Archer Reid, Call maybe Jack Williams. Who gets Sheasel? Do they tag him? Is it a Jinby? Is it a marriage? What do they do there? And at the other end, we've got Edwards v. Larkey, maybe Cole v. Surha, Brock, Jinby on, of course, the best matchup of the game will be Jack Darling returning to play his team for the first time for premiership points against his old team.
Oh, 100%. This will be a great game. And anybody thinking it's going to be not a good game only has to look at that Eagles-Richmond game at the MCG not too long ago. That was a ripper. So I don't like this whole 17th v 18th. Look.
So is it going to be a spectacle with the win? Will that affect the skills?
I think it will to a certain extent, but I just think it's going to be a cracking contest. These are two teams that are desperate for a win. West Coast only have one victory. North only have two. And they're not really in a position, North, where they can afford to be losing any more than what they've already lost because they need to show improvement. And West Coast are desperate for victories. So, look, I'm tipping North. I just think they're a little bit ahead in the rebuild. The Tristan Cherry factor for me is the biggest difference in this game. He's the All-Australian ruckman by the length of the country straight right now. And that's saying
Not
something.
Max Gawn.
No.
I've got Gawn ahead of him.
He's averaging 37 hit-outs, 8 clearances, 18 disposals and 6 tackles, Tristan Cherry. It's insane numbers. It's numbers that are just barely seen by ruckman. And don't get me wrong, Max Gawn
does a lot more around the ground, Max Gawn.
Yeah, and I feel like Max Gawn has had bigger impacts on games, individual games, but for consistency across 4 quarters, across 12 weeks, Tristan Cherry's the man at the moment for me. And it's the biggest challenge. Matt Flynn is the biggest challenge of his career to date, I think, this weekend. Because if he gets a good contest out of himself against Cherry, West Coast are a strong chance of getting 4 points.
I liked what I saw against Geelong last week for 3 quarters, so I'm going with the Eagles this week. I'm going with them and partly because it's in Western Australia, so it's still a trip for North Melbourne.
Can I just say too to Matt Flynn, don't kick across goal.
Yeah, that was a howler last week, wasn't it?
I think you and I looked
That was
at it.
just after he'd taken a hang on the wing and then I think he kicked it to...
He tried to find Marek across goal and ended up kicking it to break close.
Yeah, but then he took the second mark after that and then went across ground. So, hey, I liked his game. Yeah, but just think about top of the square.
Yeah.
Top of the square.
Sometimes your eyes are too bigger than your stomach, aren't they?
That's it. Sunday, 5:20 p.m. Carlton, $1.44. Essendon, $2.80 at the MCG. Looks like Silvani will be back in from a groin injury. Perhaps Zach Williams, who's had a calf. No ins for for Essendon. Been pretty good the last few weeks, given that they've got so many players, 197 or more, out of that team. I'm going to pick Carlton. They'll be better at the contest. Essendon it's the sort of game that they could cough up Carlton, but they really need to win this.
Yeah, we'll have this on the radio as we drive back on Sunday quarters, and I'm looking forward to it. I love watching Josh Caddy. He's the most exciting player at the moment in the AFL for me, but Carlton should get the points.
Most exciting tall forward in the competition at the moment. I reckon Cozzy Pickett might be the most exciting.
Yeah, true. I just love watching him play. It's just something about him. But yeah, Carlton for me.
Speaking of Cozzy Pickett, so Monday, the King's birthday weekend, 1:20 p.m. at the MCG. And good luck to everyone taking part in the big freeze. Go and buy your beanie if you're going to a supermarket. It's a very important cause, MND. Melbourne, $3.85. Collingwood, $1.25. Todd Viney hasn't had much luck at all. He's out with a hand injury, returned from a concussion. He's out. Lockie Schultz also has been very unlucky. He's out for Collingwood for an extended period, 6 weeks with a hamstring. Lipinski's out with concussion. McStay, a chance to come back in off that knee injury. Melbourne, Collingwood's just playing too well. Collingwood for me.
Collingwood will thrash them.
You think
so? The Pies are on fire. They're just too good.
Do they swing? Would they bother swinging anyone on a Cozzy Pickett or just back themselves?
Just back yourself. You can't. If Cozzy Pickett can't get his hands on the ball, then what does it matter? Like, it's so hard. This Collingwood midfield is just dynamite at the moment. So, for me, Collingwood are just too strong. And I love watching the Daclos brothers run around. Ned Long, they're on fire.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Favourite time of the week, Mitch? Thirsty Camel mailbag. This week's special. Jack Daniels Tennessee Whiskey 700ml, only $54.99. Once again, we'll be giving away a $50 digital voucher. Thanks to our friends from Thirsty Camel. Get your questions in for next week to TheWestSport at wanews.com.au. Please include your mobile number at the bottom of your email, as we'll send you a digital voucher if you're a weekly winner. Mitch.
Hit me.
This one from Todd Anderson. Firstly, thank you for the podcast. As a West Australian now living in the Adelaide Hills and a passionate Fremantle supporter, I'm always appreciative of a perspective from the WA media regards the Dockers. Injuries and availability have meant that the Dockers have had an unsettled team in the first half of the year. Hopefully in the second half, the Dockers match committee can have the best players available to play in their preferred positions. I would not have thought in January that Murphy, Voss and Dudley would not be penciled in to be playing in the best 22, I would have thought. And probably they were hoping to have Young, Darcy, Fife, Walters and Sturt more available. Interested in your opinion, what does the best 22 look like with players available within the next 2 weeks? And who will need to miss out when Young, Simpson, Walker are available at the end of the season? So that's going to be really interesting. So the way I look at it, that back line, you'd say Pearce, Cox, Ryan, Clark are locks.
Yep.
Probably Chapman as well.
Chapman as well. He's that versatile.
So you really
guy.
got that one position up for Simpson, Walker, Warner, Draper, really, haven't you?
Yeah.
And some flexibility on the bench as well.
I think it depends on who they're playing against as to where Warner or Draper play for me. I think that's the real tough one. Wouldn't shock me if Wagner goes back. I think they really like the way he moves and when that midfield mix comes through. So I think it'll be Wagner add that to the best 22 and then the Draper-Warner effect. Will just depend on who they're playing. Cooper Simpson, don't get me wrong, I love what he did, but coming back from 10 weeks after only playing less than a handful of games at the AFL level and then to slot back in at a potential finals run's a big ask.
Yeah, he's a good player though. He adds a lot of drive and pep and excitement.
He's one for me that next year I'm excited for. Yeah. I feel like we've got a taste of it now. I want to see it for 22 rounds.
I reckon they want him there in that back half. So it's going to be really interesting. As for the small forward, medium forward, one of the most important positions on the ground. So Michael Walters, now we want Sun to be playing in this team, particularly if they go deep in December. So he and Fife, you'd want them in the team because they just deserve the opportunity for some finals wins or some silverware if that happened. But it's really tough to break into that side. So if you talk about the forwards, Murphy, Reid, Switkowski, Frederick, Dudley, and of course Michael Walters. It's a lot of depth there. Midfield-wise, Young slots straight back in. You'd want Fife maybe as a bench player. But you've got O'Driscoll and O'Meara as well trying to come back into that side. So it's a good position for the coach, Justin Longmuir, to be in. But I don't really have any answers. I think it's about availability and injuries as well.
Yeah, I spoke to Scott Waters yesterday about this, and he said that Freo need at least two of the three in O'Meara, Walters and Fife, if they're going to compete just with that hardness, and I agree. Dudley, I think next year, it's fair to say that it's likely Michael Walters' final year in the AFL, and I'm not trying to retire the bloke, but it's the way it is. He's out of contract, and we're not sure if he's going to go on. If he didn't, that position for me is Isaiah Dudley's from next year. But in saying that, I don't think he's at an AFL standard of fitness yet. I think he comes in and out of games a little too much. When he's in games, he's so impactful. When he's not, it's just like having 17 on 18. And that's the worry in finals for me. When the heat is on, can this guy put in 4 quarters of effort? The same blow question could be asked of Michael Walters, considering he's coming back from injury. But I feel like you've got tried and tested in Walters over Dudley. So I'd like to see Dudley do a full pre-season at AFL level and then come in. Young slots straight back into that midfield. O'Meara slots back into that midfield for me. His first month for Fremantle was very, very good.
Arguably their best player.
O'Driscoll's going to be a tough one to get in as well. Yeah, I agree with you. And then you got Erasmus and Johnson are probably the unlucky ones that are going to miss out. So, look, Justin Longmuir has got a great problem to have right now because this is what you want, But obviously, this is all things going well and no other injuries. And then we know the biggest question of the lot is just going to be in the ruck, isn't it, with Darcy and Jackson? So,
absolutely.
Look, Fremantle have some great problems, but they've got to make finals first.
They do. Can you see more AFL teams flying to WA in the future for a mini gather round during this weekend of footy in Bunbury? That's from Jesse in Belmont. Well, North Melbourne got a 3-year deal, so it's going to be happening for 3 years, probably longer if it's successful. I can see another team coming across and having sort of like a mini gather round. So you play the alternate West Coast Fremantle either weekend. I can see that being a nice little, you call it Winter Wonderland or something like that.
Yep.
Don't you? What do you think?
Yeah, I do. And I think North works because we forget that before the AFL was the AFL and it was the VFL, North actually had quite a few West Australians go over and play for them.
Peter Spencer, Ross Glendenning.
Yeah. So there is that connection with some West Australians. There is North Melbourne actually quite get a good crowd here when they're in WA. So I think that's part of the reason.
Graham Melrose was another I was trying to think of.
Yeah, of course. But so what I'm saying to you is I think there's a little bit more of a connection. You couldn't do it with the Collingwood, for example, because they don't need the money. They're not going to sell home games. They're going to get a crowd anywhere. So that's not going to work. Wouldn't surprise me if maybe a Melbourne or something do it. Gold Coast, I don't think it works. GWS, all those kind of clubs. So you'd have to look at one of those teams that needs the coin. So maybe a St Kilda, although, Ross Lyon says that good clubs don't sell home games, so it probably won't happen under his watch. I don't know. It's got to be a club, though, that you think you can connect with the populace. And I think North still hold that slight edge.
I think North's a good fit, given where they're at on the ladder. The one I worry about is Melbourne up in Alice Springs, because they've lost their last 3 there. So at what point do you say we want the win over the brand being expanded to the money that's coming in as a result? But
what do they try, Geraldton?
Well, I'm just saying Melbourne probably stick to Melbourne, I would think.
Judd McVie?
Yeah.
Well, the Melbourne connection?
Yeah,
there we go. I don't know.
This one from Margaret in Cottesloe. What is the first thing incoming footy boss Greg Swan should do? Mitch?
I'll fix the MRO, like you said.
Yeah. So you could fix the MRO. I agree. That's one of the I'd also like him to move the pre-finals by. But I think whether it's just fix the matrix, whether it's you have football and non-football acts as espoused by Jimmy Bartell, whether you bring in a reckless component to that conduct grid. I just think you need more flexibility between zero. It's either 0 or it's 3 weeks. So you need the shades of grey in there.
And the other one I'm going to do?
Yep.
Abolish the soft cap. I don't like the soft cap. If you've got money to spend, you should be able to spend it.
Does it allow the rich and powerful clubs to have the far superior coaching panels, though?
Yep. But
should you have some control? I agree it should come up.
But it might also encourage the clubs that are struggling financially to actually try and become rich and powerful instead of just hoping for a level playing field.
Yep.
I think it hasn't worked previously, so you've got to try something different.
All good letters in, but I'm going to give this week's voucher to Andrew from Doubleview, who you didn't hear this letter, but this came in on Tuesday, and he couldn't agree with you more, Mitch, on no more rule changes. So
thank you, Eddie. Yeah, no, stop the rule changes. That's how you think, Greg Swan, if you're listening. No more rule changes.
Okay. Just change the MRO and change the pre-finals by.
Well, that's not rule changes, though.
No, it's not.
Leave the game alone.
Fair enough.
Josh, leave it alone.
You have been listening to the West Sports Show. We have been brought to you by Tab Touch. Got the touch? Download the Tab Touch app today. What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Remember, Mitch, you can watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube Music. Leave us a rating and a review, and don't forget to follow this podcast so you don't miss an episode. Thank you, Mitch. Good luck with your tips this week. You and I will be venturing down to Bunbury in my Pajero.
Do you think Josh wants to mic us up for that? That'd be an interesting watch, wouldn't it?
I don't think you should mic us up for that. And by the way, I'm driving. I control the playlist.
Oh, that's okay.